Happy Monday, everybody. What's up? Curtis Wilkerson here with Inside Arkansas and the Pot at the Palace, coming to you for a little bit of Hoop Hogs daily talk. We're going to preview this Michigan game, obviously, tomorrow on Tuesday morning, as always. But today, I kind of wanted to talk about the importance of it for Arkansas, right? And maybe I'm overthinking things, but I don't know. I've been thinking a lot. And after watching a lot of basketball over the weekend, I got to say, I'm more and more convinced that this Michigan game is, it's kind of bordering on must-win territory for the Razorbacks, at least as close as you can get to a must-win in non-conference. Let's go ahead and put that qualifier out there because here's the thing. The SEC is, it's loaded, right? It's the best league in the country this year, I think. So on one hand, you can look at it in two different ways, I guess. On one hand, you're going to have a lot of opportunities for big wins, resume boosters. On the other, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to take some L's. And it's something that Coach Cal pointed out in the press conference after beating UTSA the other day. Arkansas needs some meat on the resume before them because, like he said, he's looking around at the league right now, and it's, man, there's a 9-1, there's a 9-0, there's an undefeated 14-2 against the ACC. You're looking for wins, and then people are, right now kind of looking at Arkansas when they're looking for wins. And I thought it was interesting that he said that. And listen, I've said it a million times, and I'll do it again, even though folks are probably going to yell at me anyway, and that's okay. I know that it is a long season. Not expecting them to be a finished product yet. I get it. I know that the most important thing is playing your best basketball come March, when you gearing up, peaking for postseason play. Yep, absolutely. And yes, I do believe that Arkansas is going to be doing that. Still very high on this team when it comes to the big picture of what they can be. But, okay, and this is not negativity, it's just reality right now. The Hogs haven't passed the eye test through 9 games this season. Not once. They haven't for a 40-minute basketball game outside of Maryland Eastern Shore. And, you know what the deal was there. And yeah, the eye test does matter. I think it does. How many times have you left a game this season, whether you were there or you watched it on TV or whatever, well, you felt like Arkansas really looked the part? Not that many. I think especially comparatively speaking, when you take into account the expectations that came with this team. Doesn't mean they won't get there, but they're not there right now. And it's a little bit fascinating. It's kind of a polarizing team if you think about it. On paper, the resume it's okay. 7-2 record, that's fine. Only losses came to ranked opponents on neutral floors. That's nothing to be upset about, really. A bunch of double-digit wins over the scrubs that you played. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. This team is not bad. They're not piling up losses, nothing like that. Okay, so don't get me wrong here. Don't get it twisted. Just not overly impressive, again, so far relative to their peers and relative to the expectations that they had coming into the season. We've all watched. There's room to improve for this Arkansas team. And again, the SEC is a wagon. We'll talk about it a little bit more specifically here in a minute. But I think it's about time for Arkansas to start showing some of those tangible signs here that they're going to get this thing going, that they're going to get clicking. I get it. It's a brand new roster. This is not unique to Arkansas, right? To have a bunch of turnover. It's not. I get it. There have been injuries. Absolutely. It's impacted things. At the same time, Missouri just beat the hell out of Kansas without their leading scorer. Kansas, they just went to Seattle and beat Gonzaga without their starting point guard, and then their backup point guard got hurt in the middle of the game. Alabama loses a returning starter in Latrell Wrightsell for the season, and they go hammer North Carolina on the road. So good teams do figure it out, and not all teams are created equal, and some of those, like Alabama, for example, has a bunch of dudes who are coming back anyway, so there's more continuity. I get all that. And yes, I understand patience is required with this team. That's true. And I'm going to give it to them for sure. But it's also a hell of a lot easier, I think, to practice patience if these guys start to give us a reason to trust the process, right? It's a lot easier for me, too, to sit up here and yap about it to y'all and not have tomatoes thrown at me if they start showing a little bit more proof of concept, right? We can acknowledge the growing pains while also acknowledging that with high expectations comes a high amount of responsibility. And that's just part of the deal with John Calipari. Like the scrutiny is going to be there. The expectation is going to be there. And then it's all about how you deliver and when you do it, right? Anyway, for whatever reason, right now, it's not quite clicking for Arkansas, and they're behind where they need to be. That's not my observation alone, okay? You listen to the press conferences after the games. Coach Cal has been vocal about that he's got a lot of work to do. They're not where they want to be. The players have been vocal about that. National analysts, they see it too, and we know that they love to roast John Calipari whenever they get a chance. Just kind of part of the deal that comes along with him. My point, though, is as we get into preparation for this Michigan game, I think it's really important for Arkansas for a variety of different reasons. They've got one more spotlight opportunity in 2024 in non-conference play before you flip the calendar and then you flip to SEC. It's Tuesday night in the basketball mecca, Madison Square Garden, the Jimmy V Classic on national television against a ranked opponent. You're not going to have a better opportunity than that. Internally, like within the walls of the locker room, the team, this doesn't matter, okay, to them. They're focused on them, as they should be. Externally, though, perception, vibes, fan excitement, and engagement, the Razorbacks need to look the part and be up to the challenge in this game at a much higher level than they have been in similar games where, frankly, the three high major opponents they've played so far, they've trailed for roughly 117 out of 120 minutes of basketball. All right, so they got to be better. They got to be up for these moments. I halfway joked after being in Kansas City for that thing in Thanksgiving and said, I got to stop going to these games because for whatever reason, these neutral sites, these showcase, the spotlight opportunities, Arkansas's had a hard time shining on that stage for whatever reason. I don't know, but they got one more opportunity to go over and do it and correct some of that, right? And I think Razorback fans need it. You guys need it. Everybody's stressed out about football and everything. Basketball is a little bit down. You're kind of tired of being the butt of the joke when you don't feel like you deserve it, right? A good performance, I think it would go a long way towards remedying some things that some people might be feeling some type of way. And they could go out and beat Michigan by 20 tomorrow night, and they're still going to have plenty to work on, right? But it gives Cal that notch in the belt to build on here at Arkansas. And there's something to be said for that. There really is. Like the Miami win last week, it was gutsy. It was good for a number of different reasons. It's a power conference opponent. You had to rally back. It's a good way to help you kind of come together on the road as a team. I think it's one that's going to probably age a little bit better than it was received, but it's not a huge, it doesn't do a whole lot for your resume. It doesn't boost your national appeal that much right now. It doesn't. And again, like, understand they're going to have plenty of opportunities for that, but you need to start showing it. I think that there's maybe a little bit of a perception and a narrative that's building about this team right now in the wrong direction. And that's why you got to start looking the part. So Miami, like, hey, it's a road win over high major. You never apologize for that. Could have done a lot more harm than good if they would have lost that game, but they didn't. Arkansas needs to have its moment. That's where I'm at with this Michigan game. The Razorbacks, John Calipari, this program, they need to have their moment at a time where nearly the entire SEC has already had one, mind you. Because if you go look at it right now, the only SEC teams who do not have a win in the first two quadrants of the net rankings are Arkansas, South Carolina, and I'm recording in the middle of the Texas and UConn game. Right now, UConn's beating up on Texas. If they don't come back and win, they will join Arkansas and South Carolina. The only three teams then in the SEC who don't have a win in the first two quadrants. And I'll just go through the list real quick of quality wins or power conference wins for teams in this league. It's staggering. It's a deep league, man. Auburn, they've beaten Houston, Iowa State, North Carolina, Memphis, Tennessee. They've beaten Baylor, Syracuse, Virginia, and Louisville. Alabama has beaten Illinois, Houston, Rutgers, and North Carolina. Florida, they're 9-0. They're undefeated. They've beaten Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia. So, I guess they're playing the entire ACC, but maybe some of the lower teams there, but they've won 3 of them. Kentucky, Duke, and then you got to give credit where it's due. To be down 16 in Seattle against Gonzaga and to fight back shorthanded and win that game in overtime, hats off to Mark Pope. He's squeezing every ounce of potential out of that roster right now. The last few minutes of that game in overtime, they had 5 guys on the floor who couldn't dribble, and they still found a way to win the game. It was really impressive stuff. I got to give them credit. Mississippi State just beat the brakes off of a top 20 Pitt team the other day. They beat Utah. They beat SMU. Texas A&M has wins over Ohio State, Creighton, Rutgers, who has those 2 McDonald's All-American freshmen. They beat Wake as well. Ole Miss got that big win over BYU on a neutral. They beat Louisville. And even though they didn't win that game over Thanksgiving weekend against Purdue, they opened a lot of eyes with the way that they played because they passed the eye test in that one. And we mentioned Texas playing UConn right now as I'm recording. Got a win over Syracuse. They went on the road and beat NC State, which is probably about the same as Arkansas going and beating Miami. I understand that. Georgia, they beat St. John's. They beat Notre Dame. Oklahoma, who's undefeated. They got the longest winning streak in the country right now. Wins over Providence, Louisville, Arizona, Georgia Tech. They won the battle for Atlantis. I mean, the list goes on. LSU got a big win at Kansas State. They've beaten UCF, a Big 12 school. They've beaten Florida State. Missouri, of all people, just beat Kansas. And that place was a madhouse, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. But that's a huge win for Dennis Gates and that program. Vanderbilt changes coaches. They're 9-1. They won at Virginia Tech. They won at TCU. They beat Seton Hall. South Carolina, but they do have wins over Virginia Tech, and they went on the road and beat Boston College. And then you look at Arkansas right now. Every team that we just listed, with the exception of Missouri, who beat Kansas, has multiple wins against high major opponents. Arkansas, 3-6. Miami, that's their win right now. The end. Taking care of business in this final opportunity against Michigan. It boosts the resume. It helps you pass the eye test. It increases your national perception. You're standing within the SEC, which is incredibly deep. They might get a dozen teams in the NCAA tournament. Arkansas is going to be one of them, but you want to be higher up in that pecking order. It helps John Calipari. It helps the fans get excited, become more engaged. It helps my mental health. Get it done, fellas. It's a big opportunity for the Razorbacks. It's going to be a tough challenge. Michigan's very good. We're going to break it down tomorrow. A unique style of basketball. I think they're going to be along the lines of Illinois in terms of their physicality. A really good defensive team. Arkansas is going to have to be on their P's and Q's offensively to score at a consistent clip against these guys. And they do some things that are very unique with their 4 and 5 man. They got a pair of 7-footers, and they use both of them in ball screens. One is the handler, one is the screener. It's unique action that they're going to have to be really prepared for. And they got to go out there and bring it in the spotlight. We don't want to see Arkansas going into another game against a high major opponent where they fall down 11-0 right out of the gates and they're playing catch up the entire time. Get off to a strong start. Look the part. You want people to be tweeting the eyeball emojis and a picture of Coach Cal after this game in a good way instead of a bad way, right? Flip the script, change the narrative, get a feel-good win. I think this is a really, really important game for the Razorbacks. And tomorrow we'll talk about how they can go about getting it done. And I'm excited. Flying out there Tuesday morning. We'll be down around Madison Square Garden the entire day. Really, really looking forward to getting in there and covering a game. I mean, it's a bucket list. It's a bucket list for me to go cover a game in there. It's a bucket list for all those dudes to be able to go play. Hope they bring it. I hope they do. And it's time for them to do it because things are going to get real very, very quick when SEC play rolls around. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Always fun chatting with you. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas and the Pot at the Palace. We'll be back in the morning. Everybody have a good day.